Hey there, friends! So, today I'm stoked to bring you a sick collection. 20 interesting and kind of under the radar survival games, and honestly, each one's got something unique for everyone to vibe with. But yeah, since nobody's really into those super long intros, let's just skip all that and jump right in, you know? Hail to the Rainbow. Alright, so if you've been searching for the most atmospheric survival game out there, something that's totally different from all the other stuff in this genre, then I gotta tell you about this one. Full transparency though. It's not the full version, more like a demo situation. But it's already out there for everyone to check out. And since it's genuinely interesting enough to grab your attention, I figured we'd kick things off with this bad boy. So if you remember or know about this game called 35mm, well, it's from the same dev, so atmosphere-wise, it doesn't lose anything. Picture this, the Soviet Union, right? But it didn't collapse. It actually got super successful, reached all these crazy technological heights, and then everything just crashed and burned into the void. The whole world basically sank into apocalypse mode. And yeah, that's exactly what happened in this game. You're playing as this dude named Ignat, young guy, who's traveling around in this beaten-up old Neva and just surviving, you know? Throughout the game, you're checking out different locations, gathering supplies, fixing up your ride from time to time, solving some wild and seriously tricky puzzles, and battling robots. Cause yeah, those things are apparently what caused all this mess. Even though it's technically just a demo, the vibe is honestly insane. Kinda reminds me of Pacific Drive, which I absolutely love this year, so definitely give it a shot. Sengoku Dynasty. Okay, so I talked about this game way back last year when it first hit early access, and as you'd expect, it's since left early access and got a full release. Plus, you can play solo or co-op with your buddies. In this one, you're basically the mayor of your own village, set during feudal Japan times. And your job is to do literally whatever it takes to make it prosper, right? Here's the thing though, you're gonna be grinding a lot, just you, solo, no shortcuts. At the start, when there's 0 villagers yet, you're building this whole village by yourself from scratch. And this is where Sengoku Dynasty really hits that classic survival vibe. You're collecting sticks and stones, crafting axes and basic tools out of them, and then it's the usual. Start simple, level up to complex stuff. Oh, and to get your village population growing, you gotta find refugees, right? They need houses, beds, food, all that takes real effort and resources. So basically, if you've been wanting to build your own medieval Japanese village, this one's definitely worth checking out. And since it launched in early access, they've actually fixed the optimization and added a bunch of new content. No Man's Sky. Yeah, okay, so this isn't exactly brand new news, but it's a game worth revisiting because this year it got a seriously gorgeous update called Worlds. I've mentioned this game before, a couple times actually, and so let's just focus on what this update brought to the table and what's fresh. So first up, there's a new expedition where you're running around with this vanguard of exterminators, hunting bugs and looting stuff. Honestly, it gave off some Helldivers 2 vibes to a lot of people. They also revamped some planets, added new creatures, and generally there's just way more random events happening in the game now. Plus, they polished up the visuals too. Super recently, they also dropped another update that added fishing. And I'm talking 100 different fish species. Each planet's got its own, you know? And yeah, you can now cook meals from fish or explore the ocean floor with this underwater jetpack. Long story short, No Man's Sky is literally that case where the devs totally messed up the launch, but then actually fixed their mistakes and turned it into something genuinely incredible. If you missed it, I'm seriously telling you to go back and check it out. The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. So this is, well, it's a pretty wild co-op survival experience set in the most iconic fantasy universe out there. The game actually dropped back in 2023 in early access, but not too long ago it got its full release for anyone who was worried about bugs and rough playtest stuff. So in this game, right, you're basically leading a squad of dwarves on this dangerous expedition down into Moria. It's got all the usual survival mechanics. Base building, resource gathering, exploring huge locations, combat. Pretty standard stuff. But here's the thing. Since it just left early access, they've actually added some fresh mechanics and content. Oh, and the locations here? They're procedurally generated, so every run can feel totally unique. Resources are represented as iron, gold, quartz, and precious gems. Stuff you'll use to craft useful tools, weapons, armor, support structures, and all kinds of survival gear. And yeah, the caves aren't exactly a safe zone, so enemies can come after you. You'll need to fight back and build your own base to defend yourself. But the real focus here is on the lore and that co-op experience. Playing with friends, you know? Pacific Drive. Look, honestly, most survival games at this point, it's pretty hard to surprise people anymore, right? Because, like, it's usually just you're in the woods, you're drinking water from puddles, constantly crafting stuff. But the devs at Pacific Drive, they said, nah, we're going to do something different. And they totally did. First of all, it's kind of cyberpunkish. Second, you're in, like, a restricted zone, but not like Chernobyl or anything like that. It's more American backwoods vibes, but everything's full of these wild anomalies. And to survive here, your main companion is literally a car. Yeah. You use it to explore the whole world. Obviously, cars break down, so you're constantly hunting for resources, upgrading your ride, always staying mobile. And one of the coolest parts, the atmosphere is just incredible. Like, there's something weirdly relaxing about just sitting in your garage, tinkering with your car, listening to the local radio station in the background. Plus, there's actually some genuine story here too, which is a nice touch. Forever Skies. Alright, so here's another pretty solid project. And honestly, it's more like a bonus pick than a main roster spot. But Forever Skies is a full survival game, not a demo or early access situation. It actually launched last year and just got a really solid update this year. Specifically, they added full co-op. So, quick version, it's basically Subnautica, except in the air. You're exploring this stunningly beautiful but tragically destroyed world using an airship, either solo or with friends. You gotta keep an eye on your ship, maintain it, keep it running smooth. Plus, you'll make trips to the surface, do scientific research, gather resources, all that typical survival stuff. Your ship, it's not just your ship, right? It's your home, your workshop, your lab, all of that. So you're definitely going to want to upgrade it and customize it by collecting resources from the ruins you find. And while you're doing all this, you're treated to these seriously atmospheric views of how nature's evolved differently. Like, it's a pretty solid survival game in its own right. If you somehow missed it, definitely go fix that now. Permafrost. Okay, and here's another demo. Yeah, which, like I said before, is interesting enough even in this stripped-down version to deserve your attention. Imagine, like, a mix of Rust and then randomly The Long Dark. That's basically this game. It's survival, right? And the story goes, the world's been stuck in permanent winter forever. So you're either going solo or playing co-op with your crew and you gotta survive. Pretty standard stuff overall. You're exploring this post-apocalyptic world, building bases, gathering resources, hunting animals, dealing with the cold. And because of that cold factor, finding supplies and resources gets way more complicated. So you actually gotta think about how you manage what you collect. Can't just waste stuff randomly. Same deal with heating. Sure, you can find firewood, but eventually it runs out. So you're looking for other power sources, like batteries, for example. Oh, and the game's got this cool feature where you've got a dog companion that warns you about bad weather and becomes like your loyal buddy. Plus, they'll help you carry some stuff too. And yeah, you can explore the world on foot or using vehicles if you can find them. The Planet Crafter. So this is basically a survival simulator, but with this specific angle, you land on this new planet and your goal is to turn it into your own slice of paradise. Gameplay kicks off with the basics, obviously. At first, you've got almost nothing. Just some tools and resources. First thing you do? Build yourself a simple little base. While you're gathering oxygen, water, and food, but that's just the beginning. The real fun starts when you need to terraform the planet. Like, you're setting up these massive atmosphere conversion machines, planting forests, creating water bodies. Pretty much every action you take affects the planet's ecosystem and climate. You gotta keep that in mind. Honestly, the best part about games like this? Watching a lifeless planet slowly transform into your own paradise. Green fields show up, blue lakes appear, forests grow, buildings go up. It kind of makes you feel like the first Mars colonizer or something like that. It's genuinely cool. Enshrouded. So this game's set in a more fantasy-style setting, you know? It's this kingdom that got absolutely destroyed by, like, magical plague. Classic genre stuff. You're exploring the ruins of this lost kingdom, fighting mutated creatures, uncovering ancient secrets and mysterious flames. Since it's got an open world, you're obviously traveling through all kinds of different landscapes. Lush forests, scorching deserts, sneaky caves, mysterious dungeons. Each one's packed with hidden history and valuable treasure just waiting for you. And yeah, there's crafting, you can build your own base and upgrade it. Plus, there's this deep character progression system for your main character, so like, it's basically your typical survival game, just set in a way cooler, way less typical setting. Project Castaway. Okay, so this game immediately reminds me, and I think a lot of other people too, of something like Stranded Deep. At least the concept is super similar, so just like in Stranded Deep, your character gets shipwrecked on this deserted island. But this time, you're surviving in the Pacific Ocean. Traditional survival game rules apply. Find resources, battle nature, hope rescue eventually shows up, but maybe it won't. There's hunting wild animals for food or materials for clothes. Classic crafting system. Tools like hammers and axes, weapons like spears and bows. You'll build yourself a shelter or maybe a raft to explore other islands. Hunger, thirst, cold? Yeah, all that's there, obviously. So basically, it's a pretty typical island survival sim like the dozens that already exist. But hey, if you're into that stuff, it's still worth your time. The Forever Winter. Alright, so here's another game with this really unusual take on apocalypse. And yeah, you're getting a grim future and robots. I've actually talked about this one a couple times on the channel already, so let's keep it quick and straight to the point. So the story goes, far future, super dark times. Two superpowers are in an insane war, and they're using these massive heavy robots to fight it. You're playing as one of the robots, regular soldier-type droids, ideally with your friends in co-op. Honestly, your odds against the local mega machines are not great. So yeah, you gotta be careful. Classic survival stuff, scavenge for supplies, craft gear, and definitely try to avoid fights because they can end badly pretty fast. The enemy AI is actually really solid. They analyze your moves and adapt them, so every battle is like a real challenge. But here's what I really want to shout out. The atmosphere in this game is just incredible. Visually sick, but also the sound design? Seriously, just try playing this with headphones. The immersion is guaranteed. Not many survival games get the mood this right. These devs absolutely nailed it. Soul Mask. This game actually launched a bit earlier than originally planned, but that didn't mess with the quality at all. It's a solid release. Soul Mask is another survival game leaning heavy into multiplayer co-op. But instead of the usual setting, we're talking tribal vibes here. Ancient times, you know? Jungles, primates, that whole thing. And yeah, the big gimmick here, the masks. Each mask isn't just some ancient relic that looks cool or creepy on your character. It also gives you these awesome abilities. I won't list every single power, but basically, some masks give you stealth, strength, stamina, whatever. The game really shines when you're playing with friends, though. You can build your own village, throw a sauna in there, hang out in the sauna with a capybara, throw parties around the fire. Normal stuff. But you can also organize your whole clan and go wage war against other villages. Full PvP raids, you know? There's honestly endless ways to have fun here. And that's why the Steam reviews are so positive. Totally deserved. The Last Plague Blight. Okay, this is a genuinely tough survival simulator with like tons of different mechanics, but let's break it down. So in this world, there's this disease that wiped out the main character's entire village. All that's left are ruins. But here's the thing. Even though the character survived, it won't last long. This plague is consuming everything alive, so you gotta escape it. You're managing hunger, thirst, and you can only carry a limited amount of stuff on you at once. Like, you're not just throwing an entire forest of logs into your backpack and casually walking around, you know? Plus, you gotta boil water and cook food before you eat it, because raw food can poison you. And you need special containers to store water. If you're not careful moving it around, it spills. Oh, and you gotta manage stamina too. You can't just hack at trees all day. And the forest where you're surviving, it's brutal. Wild animals everywhere. So basically, if the isometric camera doesn't bother you, and you're looking for a hardcore survival simulator, definitely check this out. So there's a really good chance you haven't even heard of this one. It's called If Sun Sets, and it just dropped in early access super recently. The visuals look kind of rough and buggy at first glance, but honestly, the game runs pretty clean, so let's cut to the chase. The concept is dead simple. You're playing co-op, building your settlement, and when night hits, boom, all these undead creatures and nasty stuff attack. So the game's split between day cycle and night cycle. During the day, players gather resources and build fortifications. You're exploring the island and ancient ruins, crafting weapons and armor, mining minerals, learning new combat techniques, setting up traps and defenses against monsters. Since there's so much going on, you can definitely split up responsibilities. One person handles farming, while another focuses on defense and tool crafting. But the main objective? Getting off that island and finding evacuation routes. Alright, so everyone who loves survival games has definitely heard about Valheim by now. But not as many people know that something pretty similar actually dropped not too long ago. I'm talking about ASKA, a new survival game also leaning hard into co-op with Viking themes. It's another third-person survival simulator, and the main goal is building your own settlement of brutal Vikings. It's basically a colony sim, but with massive survival and enemy defense mechanics mixed in. You start building simple houses, then blacksmiths, barns, other structures. You gotta manage all this carefully so your Vikings don't starve or freeze to death. Combat's definitely still there, though. You're not just defending your village against attacks, you're also leading raids on other settlements. Oh, and one cool feature, you can control basically every NPC. Each one's got their own skills and personality. If you're into Scandinavian settings, ASKA's definitely a must-play. Also worth mentioning on the co-op and survival front, Palworld. This thing absolutely exploded when it released and grabbed this massive online community. Things have cooled down a bit now, but people are still playing it. The big draw? You can command living forces. There are these creatures in the game that look kind of like Pokemon, but they're basically just animals. You can use them, sell them, capture them, defeat them, whatever. The game's not limited by setting either. You can start with a primitive camp and an axe and end up with complex conveyor belts and bazookas, all thanks to these local creatures. They become your helpers with tasks, combat partners, beloved pets, and food sources. I remembered this game because they announced a mobile version coming. If they add crossplay, I think the online community is going to explode again. Survival Fountain of Youth. Alright, so finally this year we got the most classic survival simulator you could possibly imagine. It's an open-world survival game on an abandoned island. Or actually, multiple islands, because it's the Caribbean. This one's a full single-player experience without co-op focus. You're playing as a 1600s explorer, so the weapon selection matches that time period. One major goal, survival, obviously. But also, you're trying to uncover the mysteries of these islands because your character's searching for this legendary fountain of youth. So yeah, finding resources, hunting, building a shelter, all standard. But get this, the Caribbean islands are way farther apart than you'd think. So you gotta build yourself a simple boat and maintain it if you don't want to sink. Pretty solid survival simulator overall. Good way to spend some time. Duckside. Oh, and recently on Steam, this absolutely wild survival game dropped called Duckside. Picture this. Take something like DayZ or Rust, right? But you're playing as a duck. Or a goose. Yeah. Sounds completely absurd, and honestly, that's exactly why it's hilarious. So you're surviving in an open world just like those games. Fighting other players in duck and goose form. Doing standard crafting, gathering resources, building your base. Which is kinda a downside, because you spend a lot of time actually crafting. There's not really that hardcore PvP focus that made DayZ so intense. And honestly, the game could use more of that. So my advice? Play these survival sims with your friends. Solo? There's not much to do. But yeah, it's a hilariously fun duck survival game. A little weird, but that's the whole charm. Definitely worth at least trying once. Nightingale. Okay, this game is pretty unconventional with its setting. NGL, when I saw the first trailers, I was hyped, like really excited. But when it actually launched, I was seriously disappointed. The gameplay felt rough, and the technical state was not great. So, yeah, technically the game came out pretty mid. But the idea behind it? Super cool. On one hand, killer atmosphere, beautiful biomes, sick landscapes, interesting dungeons, puzzles, crafting. You want to dive in head first. But bugs and rough gameplay kind of kill the vibe. That said, the actual game's got this really unique stylized Victorian-era aesthetic. Open world you can explore solo or co-op. Classic crafting, weapon upgrades, progression. So, if clunky optimization doesn't scare you off, and honestly, the devs probably fixed a lot of that already, it's worth checking out. Bellwright. And to wrap things up, I wanted to end with a more classic, medieval setting survival game called Bellwright. Even though the project's currently in early access, that hasn't stopped it from already collecting a solid amount of positive reviews. Let's break it down. You're playing as a rebel, and your main goal is gathering your own army and launching an uprising against the king. Classic genre start. You begin small with just a tiny camp and need to recruit your first followers. You're gathering or farming resources, building and fortifying your base, training soldiers. Gameplay basically combines three really interesting mechanics: settlement building, resource management, and massive battles with your army. The combat kind of reminds me of Mount and Blade a little bit. In the chaos of it all, you gotta use your weapons smart, there's several types, and abilities to come out on top. For early access, it's surprisingly solid. If you dig medieval settings, you should definitely try it out.